Thank you, Alan. Now I'd like to invite up our speaker for today. His name is Steve Honey. I think you all know who he is. So welcome up, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Happy Sunday. Nice to see you all. Presentation. Are we okay? Beautiful. Okay. 1 second. I'm just recovering from a case of old age. Can you recover from that? Anyway, this helps. It's water, cold water. Okay, so communicating with spiritual power. So my identity to many, including to true parents, even though I've had a number of different missions, my identity to true parents and to a lot of others is as a singer. And that's what I love to do. And it was my Isaac when I met the church. It was my sacrifice. And over the years, I haven't had the opportunity, and that's come back. And then I had an inspiration because I had surgery last year and almost completely lost my voice. So I said, okay. So I prayed and I said, I accept it. If I don't sing again, that's okay. I accept that. But when my voice started coming back, it's not back completely, but it's almost back. I said, okay, now I'm going to do something with it. I never really promoted myself. I've been asked to sing, but I never promoted it. So my message today is about communication and the analogy of singing with communication. And there's a lot that matches up with that, because communicating heart is the most important thing to communicate. It's not just words. It's not just divine principle, but especially for those who have been listening to Dr. Young and Morning Devotion, really expresses the importance of heart, of that kamdong, personal relationship. So music is a great way to communicate heart, because it's, it does that effectively in many, many ways. I'll be teaching a class. I'll talk a little bit about it, but a lot of you have seen the flyer. It's Saturday. I'm going to go more into detail and technique of the how-to. This is more the spiritual content and a little bit touching on. Sometimes when we have the weekend workshop, we call it the table of contents for the divine principle, right? Because there's just in one weekend you can't really teach that much. You just touch on all the highlights. So I'm just going to touch on some of the points. So this is a shortened version. So I'm going to start with Father's words, and this is relating music and communication. How can people from diverse nations and languages share their feelings in a short time? It cannot be done with literature or fine arts. It can be done only through song. A song, though short, can express all kinds of feelings, capture anyone's heart. What songs make us happiest? Songs that praise the most precious central being of the universe. They attract the greatest attention of all beings, including all things in nature. When we sing God's praises in the evening under the setting sun, we can move God's heart, empathize with our emotions. Those are Father's words. So we want that. God wants that. Those who listen are benefiting from it. So it's important to figure out, okay, what spiritual heart do we apply to that? Because we're communicating to heart, but also what physical technique? We want God to help us sing more beautifully, and we want God to help us inspire others. We all know this from divine principle. If I'm preparing a lot of slides for an outside audience. So, for my class, if you have guests, also I'm going to offer it to churches for their choirs. So I'm going to, because you're all members, I'm just going to touch on some divine principle points. But the important point here is we know intellect, emotion, and will. Emotion is the strongest, and emotion can inspire us to do really good things, and emotion can guide us to do really other things. So how to touch people's heart, let's address how to touch people's emotion. So why learn? Internally and externally. Well, for singing, you may want to sing some higher notes. You hear a song, wow, that's a beautiful song, I want to sing it, but it's just too high, I can't do it. It's just too much, Or thinking about relationships, communication, we may want to reach the heart of someone we didn't think we could reach. That's singing a higher note. Or you want to be able to sing louder. Sing loud so you can't hear people complaining. Complaining about how loud you're singing. So there's techniques for singing higher notes. I'll get into that just a little bit. Yeah. We want to hold a note longer, you know. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. You know, right? Maybe some of you have been there, you know. In choirs, they call it staggered breathing. It means you don't take it at the obvious spot, otherwise the whole choir stops singing, you know. Or it means you're staggering because you're running out of breath, but that's what we call it. So also speaking more spiritually, we run out of confidence, we run out of an emotional stamina. Okay. So for singing, air is always there, it doesn't go away. Just how do we fill ourselves with it so that we can sing as much, as loud, as long as we need to. The same way God is always there, just have to tap into that and allow God to fill us up with the right heart. Make sense? Another reason why to learn. You may be singing with a group, and singing with a group, the voices, the qualities of the voices need to kind of match, you know? You're singing, here's your soprano, oh, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. You know that person? That's George. So we have to make sure we're not being that one. So the opportunity and the training and the skill to be able to match other voices and to listen to other voices. So that's another reason we want to learn. Or speaking spiritually, we may want to connect with the emotional energy of someone else, right? You know, if someone's really meek and quiet, and Reverend Mrs. Booner, the Messiah, true mother is the only begotten daughter. Well, some people, evangelicals, that might, you know, affect them. But somebody who's meek and quiet and fearful, it may make distance instead of getting closer. So the way we present whatever the message, you know, not just teaching principle, but even in other relationships, it's sensing what that person's energy is, you know, and how to build rapport, right? That's an important factor. So learning to sing to match the other people, learning to speak and make eye contact and do the things that make rapport. Dr. Young says we should listen more than we should speak, right? That's another way to build rapport. So that's another analogy with singing and the flexibility to communicate. You may want to adapt our voice to different emotions, you know, like we just sang, sing aloud, Hosanna to the Lord, right? But if you do, sing aloud, Hosanna to the Lord, you know, it doesn't match, right? You know. Now, sometimes you're just singing for yourself. That's okay. You know, if you're singing, you know, in the shower, you're singing on, you know, as you're driving or walking down. I sing a lot when I'm driving. And my wife realized if I like the music, I slow down. And if I don't, I'm usually going several miles above the speed limit. But you understand the difference, you know? Or another thing, we're Belvedere. I know a place where the sun shines like gold. You don't want to sing that, I know a place. It doesn't match, right? So, you know, if you want to find the right emotion for the song you want to sing, or the same thing with building rapport. We want to match the people, the message, or, you know, even if you're giving Divine Principle lectures, when you're talking about the Jesus' death on the cross, that's a very different emotion, right, than talking about chapter 1. So how to match the emotion. Another reason, the flexibility, what's your style? I don't know who's looking at trying to figure who which ones. Are you more classical or something a little different? So maybe that's part of the program. I was looking at the. So you may have like a raspy, heavy metal voice. That's your style. That's what you like to sing. That's what you enjoy. You know, and why try to change that? Why try to make a trombone sound like a trumpet or an oboe sound like a clarinet? It's all different. Like an orchestra has all these different instruments. A garden has all different colored flowers. That's what makes it beautiful. So I don't want to teach people how to sing like me because I don't want competition. No, that's not. That's not it. It's because everybody has a style that's natural for their voice and also a style that they enjoy connecting with. But you still want to have the flexibility, even if you're a heavy metal singer or a hip hop or rap guy, but you hear this beautiful ballad. Wow, I really want to sing that instead of what I usually do. So the different colors. So same thing, we may have, again, building rapport, we may have a very different personality than the person we're trying to make a relationship with. So the common denominator in all of that is heart. Whatever my personality is, if I love Justin, even though I irritate the hell out of him, he still feels close to me because he knows I love him, So that's the common denominator. Or another reason why to learn. Maybe you're sure you already have a wonderful voice because mom said so. Got to trust mom. Mom told me, she wouldn't be prejudiced or anything, right? Yeah. Or maybe nobody wants to hurt your feelings. That's another big one, when I was young, both my dad and my elder sister used to sing in the shower, often. And the tiled walls amplified the horror. So I never sang when I was young, because I thought, I don't want to do that to anybody. But they were sure that they sounded like, Pavarotti, and, they thought it was wonderful. But so sometimes it feels good to perform, and what you're thinking you sound like is very different than what you sound like, So, and it's good to have confidence. Can't knock that. In the same way, if we lecture or we, in a conversation, trying to present something with our own concepts, it can have a negative impact. It can make a distance. So the point is, and we're going to get more into this specific point, to let God sing through you, let God speak through you, let God love through you, instead of, this is how I'm going to do it. So in singing, you have to, understand what, the humility to do the right thing, And in our lives, we have to have the humility to let God come in. But our potential, maybe none of us, except Heavenly Father, know our true potential in singing or in relationships. So that's another reason why to learn. And most important, to develop ways to allow God to sing through us and to love through us. Invite God to send love through us. We want God to be able to use us, to inspire through us, whether to praise God or to experience God's aching heart. So, how? We're going to touch a little bit on technique. Now, I know some of you aren't singers, and I also know that some of you shouldn't be singers. I won't name names. But still, let's talk about technique a little bit in terms of, but we're talking about internal and externally. Again, this is singing as an analogy for our spiritual communication. Okay. So start with breath. The foundation of singing, the most important part is the breath and breath support. So picture the billow that's what your diaphragm is down here, and it's just like this, and it comes like this, and that opens up your lungs. But we don't think about it that way because we can't actually feel our diaphragm. Just we want to fill up. So the diaphragm is like in the God position. We want to have the air fill us like we want to have God's love and God's wisdom fill us. That's the foundation, both physically for singing and for our spiritual lives and for our relationships. Without a solid foundation of faith, God has a hard time loving through us. So the diaphragm gives us that. So let's start with that. So the point is, how do we take the best breath? Now, I know some of you have some experience breathing, right? Most of you do, I think, but I'll talk about a little bit. So first imagine, and this is something I actually do when I sing. Imagine the love of God pouring in through the top of your head and down to your belly. That serves a couple of important purposes. One is you can fill up in an instant. It's not then sing. It's I can feel my lungs just like that because I'm imagining, boom, like a bowling ball coming down through me. It's important because we can take a breath quickly. Again, like you don't have much time to take a breath in a song. I know a place where the sun shines like gold, where the cherries bloom forth, and You know what I mean? You don't have much time, but if you can fill it quickly. But more important, by opening up to that air coming in and open, rather than thinking of sucking it in, it's filling you, because that allows the feeling of openness, a column of air, which we're going to talk about. So have that open instead of inhaling, sucking air in, filling quickly. God is filling me up with His love. Then, here's a real key to both technique and to our life of faith. An unbroken column of air all the way from your belly and out the top of your head, supported by the diaphragm, supported by God. And it's important that nothing blocks that. Okay? It's not, let me show you, it's not, it's, So from here to here, that's openness. It saves a lot of effort. But also an unbroken relationship with God's presence. So on this column of air, we create a natural sound with freedom. Freedom is important in the concept of both life and love and singing. Dr. Young, most of you attend morning devotion. I see a lot of familiar faces here. He talked about freedom is the world of heart. In a loving relationship, you're free. An analogy for me is my buddies I grew up in Delaware, and I have two friends. We've been friends since we were 8 years old, literally. We're still in touch. Every year or two, we get together for a weekend. We're having a Zoom call tonight, with some other friends as well. The thing about that is, when we're together, there's no restriction. You can say anything. You can criticize somebody, of course, in a loving way, and it's complete freedom. It comes because of the heart that we have, the long-standing heart we have. So the same thing with singing, and the same thing with our relationship with God, to have that openness, so we can find what I like to talk about as a natural sound, natural relationships, and a natural voice. Sorry, it's old age. Sorry. Free gift from my job. Nice. So what's God's design? We teach this in principle. We all know this quote: God's invisible qualities can be seen in the world that God's made, right? We know that, right? So we can apply God's design to our natural sound. God made things in duality, okay? So in relationships, as well as in our voice, plus, minus, positive, negative, you know it all, right? So we'll see how important that is to singing in a minute. So man, woman, male, female, et cetera, the harmonious relationship between the dual characters. We're not talking about man or woman, or stamen or pistil. We're talking about it's the harmonious relationship of those two natures that makes something beautiful. A harmony between husband and wife makes a loving family. So the two parts of our voice also make an ideal voice. And this could be an introduction to marriage blessing, because that represents God's duality on the earth. So here's how it relates to the voice. See this four-position foundation again. We've seen that a couple times, right? But here we're talking about yang and yin, or yin and yang, breath, yang and yin, harmonious sound. So the yang is the masculine part. That's more pointed, more, this is not pretty, but I'll do it anyway. Amazing grace. Some people like that, but not me, but some people like that. But in some cultures, that's kind of a normal sound. Then the yin softens that, like my wife softens me. Or it's not always 50-50. Sometimes, and you all know my wife. Sometimes I'll soften her, but anyway, it's what's wonderful about us. We've both had frontline missions, and we both had missions where we're away from home for periods of time. So neither of us is upset when the other one is away, because we've both been there. So it's healthy. It's a plus. But anyway, she's incredible. In fact she left this afternoon for Pennsylvania for GPA for a workshop. So and GPA. A lot of kids call her Mama Honey, because she has that heart. She loves those kids so much. But again, it's the relationship. So the softer sound, Amazing Grace, also not really that pretty on its own. This is kind of contrived. It sounds like I'm trying too hard to sound like an opera singer, right? Makes sense? But if you take one, and end up in the middle, can you hear the both? The yang part is sending the sound out into the room. We call it a spin. And the yin part softens that, so it's a little more pleasurable to hear. Amazing Grace, right? You can hear both parts of it, the yin, the harmony of the yang and the yin. It makes a harmonious sound, like a husband and wife in harmony make a beautiful family. So that's how we call that placement. Where do we allow the sound to resonate? Resonates here, resonates back here. There's also, we'll get into it another time, head voices up here, chest voices down here, but the relationship of those, where we allow, not push it to resonate, allow it to resonate. But the point is, the yang helps us communicate, helps send out an energy. It's not just talking about volume either. It's not just singing loud. If I sang here without the mic, Amazing Grace, it rings in the room, right? Or if I'm Amazing Grace, well, that's good for a prayer by myself in the prayer room. But the yin and the yang, just yang is uncomfortable. Just yin is too soft, So the combination of the two, the harmony, is what makes it. So communication is the response you get. I heard that from Tony Robbins. Anybody hear any Tony Robbins stuff? He might not have originated it, but that's where I heard it. Communication is the response you get. It's not what you say or what you sing. It's how you affect the others you're communicating to. So if you feel good, but it's not touching people's hearts, not reaching people's minds, what's the point? So a poor sound, or a contrived sound. Contrived means you're trying to sound professional, and it's not real. That doesn't necessarily communicate. Same way, again, communicating to others. Just teaching divine principle or preaching may not win people over. Just focusing on vocal technique may not make a good sound. So if we're not moving hearts, then we're not really communicating. And this is what happens. Remember him? Singing with I try to make it entertaining too. But we know people like that, right? I like her. Singing with a natural sound can penetrate the room and penetrate people's hearts. There's also a sense, if you sing naturally, there's also a sense of sincerity. Or the type of people who are so sure of themselves, they sing so loud and boisterous, it doesn't seem sincere, it doesn't seem genuine. So the combination of breath support, the two key points are breath support and resonance. Where do you allow the sound to go? Not volume. Okay, so we want to touch heart. So, that's why I was demonstrating both and the combination of them, because that makes a comfortable sound. So we don't have this lady over here. But Mom said, no, sorry. What do we want to communicate? Here's a few quotes from the Bible and from True Father. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing God with gratitude in your hearts. Gratitude, that's a big one, right? I will pray with my spirit, but I will also pray with my understanding. I will sing with my spirit, but I will also sing with my understanding. From Corinthians. From Father, hymns sung with deep emotion are the best forms of entreaty and spirit-filled prayer. It's a good quote, right? I did a lot of looking to try to find Father's words about singing. It's not a whole lot, but the ones he says are pretty special. Prayer by singing can be more moving than prayer in words. When singing hymns, you can quickly experience the feeling of being drawn into a world of mystery. Ooh, it's nice, huh? That's what we want. In the early days of the church, singing was a big deal. People were singing with tears, were singing for hours. So that's what we want. What do we want to communicate? Right, communicate heart. A song is more than words and notes. A song is more than words and notes. We have the opportunity to send energy and love directly into radiate into people's hearts. You can sing, as I mentioned, you can sing for yourself. That's okay, but sometimes you want to affect people. What's the song, the Hillsong? Still, Hide me now under your wing. That's soft. You want to be hit. You don't want to hide me now. It don't sound like you want to be hidden, right? but the next part, when the oceans rise and thunders roar. Well, that reaches out, and you want people to feel the thunder, feel the oceans rise. You can do that with a good song if you sing it well. It's more than some words. In the same way, what we convey to others is more than divine principle and true parents' words. It's emotion. So that's why I say it's an analogy: singing and relationships and communicating. Maya Angelou, you ever hear from her? Great poet. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. One of her most famous quotes. So it's both with singing and with our relationships, or both, ideally, we can do something that people will remember how we made them feel. We have the opportunity to take hearts on a journey, or if you have your devotion and your service, your words can get a hold of people's hearts. Where do we want to take them? We have to discuss that. So we need, as we mentioned, we need solid breath support, and we need solid heaven support. We need that column of air spiritually and physically, technique and our hearts. But, see, capital letters, but stuff gets in the way. See the little X in front of the lady's throat? Just like our sin and fallen nature prevent us from experiencing God's love, there are elements that block our breath from creating the proper support. Right? We're pulled by the wrong desires, pulled away from God. God is still there, but we blocked it. It's the same with breath. Breath is always there, but we block it. Or Dr. Jung used the analogy of static. Find the frequency of zero, right? To tune into God. My best friend, one of these, since I was 8, he said, well, if God's there, how come we can't hear him? How doesn't he talk to us? I said, I said, the transmitter's working, but the receiver is broken. And that affected him. He said, oh, that makes sense. But Dr. Jung has a slightly different take, which I think is even better. And that is, we don't have not tuned to the right frequency. We're listening to all the other stuff, So that finding that openness, no shadows, right? High noon. Oops. High noon, there's high noon. So there's a track. See the track? Can you read those words? Greed, lust, materialism, humanism, ego, all kinds of things that knock our faith off the track. So both in singing and in life, we hold on to old habits sometimes, right? We have to figure out what are those habits. High noon, we know about that, right? This picture. All right. So what gets in the way? Again, both in singing and in our lives. In Matthew 7 says, enter by the narrow gate. For the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. So the narrow gate. So even if we get all the breathing right, all the support right, it needs to pass through something very small. You can have a big, strong breath, or you can have a big, strong prayer, but there's a tiny pathway. And that pathway, the windpipe larynx, is the vocal cords. The vocal cords are two little, like rubber bands right here. And the size on a full-grown man is about an inch or even less. Pretty small, right? On a woman, it's even smaller. Like the notes on the piano, it's the long strings that make lower sounds and the short ones that make higher sounds. That's why some people have a higher voice and some people have a lower voice. But with all the breath, it passes to something small. There's a story You probably heard the name Caruso, right? Enrico Caruso, famous tenor around the beginning of the 20th century. A contemporary with him was a woman named Luisa Tetrazzini, a very famous soprano at the time. And there's a book that's written about vocal technique, written by both of them. It's a very interesting book. Tetrazzini tells a story. She said, a woman came to me for a voice lesson, and she said, Madame Tetrazzini, my diaphragm is so strong, I can move your piano. And she proceeded to walk over to Tetrazzini's piano and inhaled, and sure enough, it moved the piano. But then Tetrazzini said, but then when she started singing, she sounded like a strangled chicken. I read the book, but the point is, this little spot here, no matter how much you have, a little bit of change can block it. So the same thing, we can be proud of our divine principle knowledge and our faith, but also it's not too hard to knock us off the path, right? So what causes that, and what can we do about it? More analogies. Oops. Here we go. Sorry, slides weren't progressing, sorry. So, again, analogies, fear, tension, what to do. We defeat it with prayer, with preparation. So, if you're tense, your muscles are tense, and if your muscles are tense, your throat is tense, and then there's no freedom. So with prayer and meditation, we feel God's presence, it calms us, and it'll, for our voice, but also for our relationship, it allows God to flow through us. Preparation gives us confidence. So musically, it's memorizing the words, memorizing the notes, practicing so our habits, our muscle memory is good, right? You know, the same thing with our spiritual habits, our study, our prayer life, to make good habits spiritually so that, you know, we can get past some of these things that block us. Now, good habits are important. We don't want to be thinking about technique. Oh, am I placing the resonance in the right place? Or did I breathe correctly? You know, so we have to make the muscle memory, right? So, you know, think about habits. The word habit has kind of a negative connotation, right? I have a drinking habit or a eating habit or whatever. But habits tend to be good things too. Like, do you remember the first time you tried to ride a bike? When you have a hard time riding a bike, right? Difficult, right? You know, maybe some of you still can, I don't know. But after you do it for a while, you don't even think about it. You know, when I worked at headquarters, I came into Grand Central and I did City Bike. You know, the City Bike, it's a bike sharing program. I hadn't ridden a bike in God knows how many years, 10, 20 years, a long time. But sure enough, I got on my City Bike and jumped on and started riding because it was a habit. Or driving. You ever drive and you realize, how did I get here? I wasn't even paying attention to my driving. How did I get where I was going? You know, because it's habits. Or tying your shoes. You know. Well, maybe some of you still have trouble with that. I don't know. You have the Velcro straps, right? But, you don't think here's the loop and go around and stick it through. You do it without thinking. It's a habit. So with singing and with our spiritual life, we want to make good habits. So that's important. So like morning devotion, making a habit of morning devotion, you know. I want to be with God. God wants to be with me. It's a win-win. So making good habits allows God to be with me, with us. Note is too high. See previous slide on fear. Here's a true story. My first voice teacher increased my vocal range by 3 steps. That's pretty significant. That's a lot. And he did it by lying to me. So I had sung, the top of my range was a G. I was comfortable with a G. It was high, but I knew I could sing it. I had sung it many times before. His wife was the accompanist for the voice lessons. He had prearranged with her, we're going to play scales. And he said, Steve, this is a G scale. Ready? His wife played a C scale. I'm thinking, all right, no, I can hit that G, no problem. It was a C. And for the first time in my life, I sang a high C. He wanted me to be a tenor, you know, because tenors get all the great roles, right? And he was really into opera. He had me learn a couple of arias back in the day. But I sang a C. 3 steps above what I had ever sung before. That's significant. The reason why I could do it was I had faith. I believed. I knew I could sing that G, even though it wasn't a G. He lied to me, son of a gun. But all of a sudden, I could sing higher notes. So it's a matter of, we do have our limits, both emotionally, physically, spiritually, and vocally. We do have limits, but they're typically a lot higher than what we think they are. So if we allow God to work, we have faith, we can go higher and higher, So prayer, devotion, reading God's words, it strengthens our faith and allows God to not be blocked by our own, what we think are our limitations. Make sense? And, I won't demonstrate, but, sometimes when I give a voice lesson, I'll have somebody sing a scale, and I'll tell them what that high note sounds like. It sounds like you think it's too high. Not like it's too high. It sounds like you're thinking it's too high, because you can hear them. Lovely. Open. So anyway, true story from my voice teacher. Made it one moment, in a moment, changed it. Which posture do you think is better for singing? Does anybody here have a cell phone? Everybody. Yeah. I think the next generation is going to be like this, hunched over like this naturally. That's becoming the natural posture. But obviously, that's not the best for singing. There's something called a singer's stance. We're not going to practice it. When I do a class, we actually practice it. But you lift up your rib cage, keep it up. You stand straight, relax but straight. Even you put one foot forward a little bit to give you the presence to be able to project. To give, and again, it all relates to that column of air, that unbroken column of air. So straight back, straight neck. Even sitting in a chair. To make that a habit. I remember we had a New Hope Singers reunion several years ago, and I loved it. I was New Hope Singers for a long time, and it was at Manhattan Center. We went backstage for our first rehearsal, and there was a semicircle of chairs, and we all stood in front of our chairs, and I went up there, and without thinking, I said it like that, just muscle memory. I'm going to sing now. It was open. So same thing with our vertical habits. To make it a habit to pray, to make it a habit to read Divine Principle, read Father's Words, to make it a habit. We're blessed to have Dr. Young here giving morning devotion every single day. At first I thought, every day, really? But once I started, I get it. It's really, really wonderful content every day. Okay, what else can block our air? Ew. Now, I'm not going to focus on that for Sunday service. I just put it in there for an interesting visual to get your attention. That's cow's tongue, but you can see the back of the tongue, it's similar to our tongue. There's a big fat muscle in the back right at our throat. So, and when you're learning to sing well and open, there's things to do with your tongue, but that got your attention, right? It's lovely. Another detriment to singing and to life is pride. Pride versus humility. For those who crave applause and admiration, you want to be admired by God, or you want to be admired by people. Well, I think most of you know the right answer to that. So it can get in your way. You might not grow or learn if you think too highly of yourself, and it feels good to be admired, right? I mean, for me, I think of myself. I sing pretty well. Used to sing pretty well, getting better. And so people say, "Oh, Steve Honey, he's a singer." I'm actually a terrible person, but they look up to me because I sing. And that feels good, and the archangelic nature comes out. We've seen that with a lot of celebrities. And people take advantage of people. Another story, true story. Second gen brother came to me for advice on singing. Pretty talented, musically talented. He sang pretty well, but he was always getting hoarse and losing his voice, and he didn't know why. So he asked me what he could do about that. So I had him sing something for me. It was pretty obvious that he was forcing the sound too far back in his throat because he believed that that was a good sound. You know, oh, you know, for him that sounded great. You know, so that's what he did. So I said, and I explained that that was the problem, why he was getting hoarse as opposed to open. So I said, try this. Here's a trick you can learn, like a training you can do. Sigh and then sing. Sighing, that naturally opens your throat. It's just natural. So I said, try this. Go, So try that. So he said, okay. He went, he missed the point completely. All right, try this. Here's another. I said, so singing and speaking, your voice shouldn't be doing anything different. So try speaking into a tone. Try this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, try it. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He was addicted because he was sure that that was a good sound. What's interesting, his father sang the same way and was sure he had the best voice on the planet. I won't name names. Some of you may know. So anyway, if you think too highly of yourself, you know, that could be a problem instead of a benefit. People sense a prima donna spirit, you know, that can be alienating instead of helping. But most important, it makes it harder for God to work through you or to sing through you. You know, want to be mine. So pride is good, and we call it double-edged sword. For those who don't know, the term double-edged sword means one edge can cut your enemies, the bad guys, but one edge could cut you. You know, so there's a plus and a minus to a double-edged sword. The important thing is we need to be honest about our true motivation. It's easy to get caught up in it. Singing feels good. Singing well really feels good. Being admired for singing well feels good, but it's dangerous. Humility. Here's a whole bunch of quotes. It's already 5 o'clock, so I'm not going to read them all. But there's literally dozens of quotes in the Bible about humility. And I'll read one quote from Father about humility. The way of arrogance leads to hell, while the way of humility leads to heaven. What about you? Do you belong in heaven or in hell? Well, should we take a test? Anybody want to? So you get the message. A good performer, the reason it's a double-edged sword is to perform well, you have to think about yourself. How do I sound? How do I look? You have to, spend time on yourself to do it well. But that same nature can produce prima donnas and self-centered attitude. If you look at the attitude and morality of a lot of celebrities, right? It can be a problem. We don't want to be like that, do we? But people admire celebrities. Think about it. Think about celebrity endorsements, right? It doesn't make any sense logically. There's celebrity. I'm not a doctor, but I play a doctor on TV, and doctors everywhere recommend. He's a TV doctor. What's he recommending a medicine for? Because he's a good actor, or he's handsome, or he sings well, whatever. Here's the vocal cords in the area around it. I want you to memorize all those things. I can't even pronounce them, let alone memorize them. The reason I show that is even if you could memorize it, you would be distracted. It would take away from the process. Complicated though, right? The point is you can't think about all those things. They're all active. They're all doing something when you're singing, but you can't think about them. What we need is mind-body unity. The mind sends a message, like the thing about God's love coming down through the top of your head. In the same way, we have to let God speak through us without focusing on our own concepts. Same point. That's the analogy. So here we get into another dual characteristic. God wants to sing through us. We want God to sing through us. So there's another harmonious duality in singing and in our spiritual life. There's a lot of practical points, but how do we internalize it? Our thought gives our body direction. Our thought is the subject. We know about that, right? That's duality, spirit and flesh. You can't actually feel your diaphragm. You can't actually feel your vocal cords. So we have to connect internally, have your heart and mind send a signal to your body. Anyway, if keep God with our and keep God with us, keep our voice open. Don't just focus on technique in singing, and don't just focus on words in relationships. Vocalize, warming up. So we can practice by vocalizing and warming up. It makes good habits, not bad habits. It relaxes our throat. It sends fresh oxygenated blood to our throat, just like warming up for sports. It forces out toxins, like your muscles get like lactic acid and other things. So the exercise forces that out. It strengthens our muscles, our diaphragm, and our vocal cords. Also, the vibration, it removes like phlegm that gets caught in our throat. You don't want to start singing and have to clear your throat. I had a voice lesson and I was sick. I had a cold. I told the voice teacher, I said, I don't think I can do this today. He said, no, let's start. And he had me hum. There's a proper technique for humming too, which I'm not going to get into today, but humming for about 15 minutes, all the phlegm got loosened up. So the same with our faith. Our habits of faith clear our toxins. It gives clarity from the emotional phlegm. It warms us up spiritually. As I said, I had surgery and I was intubated for a number of hours, and that stretched my vocal cords out of shape. That's when I almost lost my voice. I'm still recovering, but by vocalizing, it's almost back now. So that's why the vocalizing is important for singing, but also making our habits, our spiritual habits, create like muscle memory for what we do every day. To wake up in the morning and automatically say a prayer. Things to remember. Here's the chart again. So open the path for air and open the path for heavenly parents to come through us. Inhale and breathe and open for the breath and allow God through. Diaphragm, they call it diaphragmatic breathing. It's a big word, but it means breathing with your diaphragm, instead of. That's important. This also means feel the power of God working through you. Make good habits in posture and your tongue. I'm not going to talk about the tongue. See that picture again? But make habits of faith. Resonance. That means connect with the song. That's what the purpose of resonance is. The personality of the song is where you're going to allow it to resonate. Connect with others. Make that harmonious relationship. Don't let singing sound like technique. There are people who they really sound like they're trying to sound professional. The same way, don't just preach. We practice singing so that it becomes natural to have breath support and openness. We practice devotion so that it becomes natural to allow God to speak in love through us. So practice singing, practice devotion. Freedom is the world of heart. We need to open our hearts and make a free relationship in singing, but more important, make a relationship with God and with others. The things to practice. Okay, prayer, but wrong practice makes wrong habits. An example, you remember the song, "Oh Lord, won't you buy me a color TV"? You hear that song? Remember that song? Yeah. I don't want to say it's really terrible, but it's kind of making fun of religion, making fun of people using religion for their own personal gain. Don't become addicted to a way of singing. Don't become addicted to humanistic or fallen behavior. Okay? Make muscle memory. Make devotion memory. Be exactly vertical, no shadow. High noon singing. Hold on to the feeling of openness. That's why you practice. If you practice well, then that feeling becomes natural. You don't have to force yourself to do it every time. Right? That makes sense, right? Feel the feeling of openness. Hold on to that feeling and hold on to God's love. Let go of the need to control. This is from Father. People often think that politics moves the world, but that's not the case. It is culture and art that move the world. It is emotion, not reason, that strikes people in the innermost part of their hearts. When hearts change and are able to receive new things, ideologies and social regimes change as well. It's quite a quote, right? Here's another quote. People often think that songs, dancing, and art are ways that human beings respond to God's joy and laughter. On the other hand, without love, Without love, singing, dancing, and art are of no purpose. The core of art is love. That's the core of what I'm saying today. Lastly, some of you may have seen it. He turned it off? Sorry. Anyway, next Saturday, it's okay. Next Saturday, the 31st, I'm giving a class here at 2 o'clock. And you're all invited, whether you sing or not, even if you shouldn't sing in public. Sing in the shower is fine, right? It's free, and what I'm doing with it is I'm going into the how-to of, I touched on so many points here, but I'll go into the how to do this, how to resonate well, how to breathe well, how to have the proper posture, actually do it in the class, so you get a feeling for what's best. Again, this was just a table of contents for a whole lot of points. So I hope, anyway, thank you. I hope you. We say a prayer. Good afternoon, Heavenly Parents. Thank you for joining us here today. We pray that our hearts can soften and open to allow you in, to love us and to love through us, so that we can be your representatives. We can graduate from being a servant of servants, to adopted children, to true children. We want to be that because we know that that's what you long for. So please use our time together in fellowship. Please use the message, the parts where you were able to speak today to inspire us intellectually and emotionally. And please be with our brothers and sisters who are out on the mission field, serving you in every way they can to bring more people to the blessing, bring more clergy to bring their congregations. Please be with True Mother. Please be with her health and her strength. Please inspire her and give her hope to know that her children are striving to do your will and striving to build your ideal world. We want to create beauty because we know in the kingdom of heaven, beauty will be everywhere. We want to be part of that. We want to be part of your love as well. We offer our prayer. We offer this devotion time. We offer our Sunday service. And we begin a new week and invite you to spend the week with us. Pray in the name of Stephen Louise Honey and the Blessed Central families here. Adieu. Thank you, everyone.
All right, let's all give Steve another big hand. Thank you, Steve. I think after today's sermon, we're either all going to go out and start singing or we're never going to sing again. Actually, I was reminded of a poem that I wrote and when I was stuck in traffic one day. And it's very short. So I want to be in the lane that moves. I want to be in a vinyl record's grooves. I want to be in an 8-track tape. I want to be in Batman's cape. I want to be in the falling leaves. I want to roll up all my sleeves. I want to wear my hair any way I dare. I want to do what's right, not wrong. I want to sing my own song. So I think the message to take from Steve is that we all have a song to sing, and don't be afraid to sing it. And because we're all here to hear you. So with that, let's have our closing song together.